Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to Show to V with Mike G, the show of life, the show of hands, the show of bourbon, the show of the 220K bump, which is not an expensive cocaine habit. Today's guest is Jessica Sanders. I've known Jessica for a little bit now, and I feel like Drink.Well especially has been something very influential to me personally. Helped me understand the business and the industry a little bit, but it's also introduced me to some wonderful friends, and we kind of talk about that a little bit. But the thing about this interview that I actually really found profound for me is it's great, to hear about Jessica's story and how she's rose to quote-unquote fame, if you will, as being one of the leading personalities in the industry, being the president of the USBG, for example. But she helped me understand communication a little bit better. She helped me understand the languages of love. And no, that's not a Neil Diamond album, although it could be someday. But it's a kind of a currency to help interact with people and help them understand you while you help them understand that you understand them. Okay, aka empathy. So let me shut up right about now and play you the wonderful interview with Jessica Sanders.
Sometimes you need to talk to each other as though you're business partners, and that it has a certain tone. And sometimes you really need to talk to each other like lovers and friends,
right?
And that has a certain tone. And transitioning back and forth is the biggest challenge, is understanding, okay, I need to snap out of business partner mode and approach this situation with some tenderness,
some softness,
and some generosity and compassion. And
it is strange, right? When you have like, there's task. The schedule has to be filled. We have butts in the seats. We have to be open. But at the same time, I have to let you know that I love you and that we need time away. And
exactly.
Has it been difficult to maintain that balance between the two for you guys?
It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, the demands on your time are really intense. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to take each other, and I'm particularly guilty of this, of taking your partner for granted and thinking, oh, well, they'll just always be around whenever I make time for them.
Yeah.
And it can be a hard reminder when you're like, well, I'm really not doing a very good job of that.
Yeah.
You know, it shouldn't be a situation where I'm trying to squeeze him in to the 15 minutes that I have available. That should be the priority of my day, and everything else falls around it. And it's hard to sometimes have that be your priority when you're being pulled in so many different directions.
I call it mission mode. Yeah, mission mode. And I remember many times Lydia and I are in the car, and she's like, what's the matter with you? And I'm like, no, mission mode. We got to get to the place on time. I'm sorry, I'm not taking criticism. I'm not having a conversation. This just has to get done. Yeah. And it's weird how you alienate your partner that way.
Very much so.
You know?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I think the other piece of it too is that when you have someone that does the same thing as you do, it's great because you share in all the joys and you share in all the hard days.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is that you really develop an insensitivity and kind of a lack of sympathy for one another, because when the days are hard, guess what? They've had the same crappy day that you've had.
Right.
So they feel no sympathy.
Yeah.
They're like, look, you just
how are you empathetic? It's like, no, you empathize with me. I've had a shitty day too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the trick is you have to learn to fall into that together and say, okay, we've both had the same shitty day. What are we going to do to get through it and get out of it together?
Make it better, right?
And, the thing about Michael and I is that we're very rarely in the same mood at the same time.
Man.
And I'm really grumpy in the morning, and my day gradually gets better.
So you're a night person, you'd say?
I'm a night person. Yeah. So I gradually wake up, I have my coffee, and then my day just gets better after that.
Oh, yeah. If it starts with the shittiest part, that's great for you.
Exactly.
It gets better, yeah.
Michael wakes up boisterous, tons of energy, tons of joy.
Yeah.
And then the day kind of like wears on him as it goes. So probably around 2:00 in the afternoon, we're about at the same place at the same time.
That is the perfect
but
place, right?
We really do kind of cross. And then by the end of the day, he's kind of grumpy and I'm in full creativity, gangbusters, get it done mode. And so that's also hard because we're never like vibing sometimes.
Man, at the same time. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. I never even thought about the sheer scale. So if you were to plot your emotions over a day, like you start off real low, like let's say 0 is not particularly happy, and then you just increase
exactly
the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you have an inverse, if to use that, an inverse correlation to Michael. But there is that point at least where you guys are totally vibing and it intersects.
Well, and I'm also a big believer in the 5 love languages.
What are those?
Okay, so the 5 love languages is
that's a lot of languages, but
it is a lot. And there's dialects too.
The 5 love dialects?
There's 5 languages, there's multiple dialects.
God
so the 5
really?
love languages is a book by Gary Chapman.
Okay.
And he asserts that every single person speaks one of 5 love languages.
Okay. Not all 5.
Not all 5.
Good, okay.
Right. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation. So you're the kind of person who needs to be told you're gorgeous, you're smart.
Sure. Okay.
I love you, right? You need to
great.
hear you look great.
Yeah.
Those kinds of words of encouragement.
Okay.
Physical touch, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Sure.
Acts of service.
What is that?
Like doing things for me.
Martyrdom?
Just doing things like, emptying the dishwasher, taking out the trash.
Selfless acts.
Yeah. Right? Gifts.
Okay.
And the last one is, I always forget the last one. Words of encouragement, physical touch, quality time.
Quality time.
Yes.
Okay,
so
what
you
does
just
that
enjoy
mean?
spending time with that person, doing activities together, just having dedicated one-on-one time without other people involved.
Got it. So I dedicated some time specifically for you, and that's what resonates.
And we're
going
to go take a hike or something, and that's our quality time together.
Very cool. Okay.
So he asserts that every person speaks one of these 5 languages and also is trained to receive love in a very specific way.
I see.
And what more often than not happens is you end up in a relationship with someone who may not directly speak your love language.
Sure.
They have to learn your language.
Yeah.
And there's also dialects. Like, so for example, say that your love language is physical touch.
Okay. But
your dialect is holding hands. And
so
that's the way
your level.
That's the way that your partner can most show that they love you is by reaching out and holding your hand.
Wow. Is there a table I can download online that just
it's a real short book, but it's excellent. And Michael and I speak very different love languages. And over the years, we've really had to learn how to adapt to each other's language and understand, okay, why is he acting this way? Well, it's because I haven't given him the words of affirmation that he needs today.
Okay.
I need to turn on that language.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, it works. And his mood improves. My mood improves.
What's your...
I'm an acts of service person.
Acts of service.
That's how I show love. And that's also how I receive love.
Gotcha.
Michael is a words of affirmation person on both ends.
He needs to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my mom is a acts of service person.
I think most women tend to be acts of service oriented.
She
most
gets
of
her
my female
pleasure
friends
from
are
that.
acts of service.
Is that, I mean, take a tangent for a moment. Is that kind of how your mom was? Where she loved to do things for the family? And
my mom was really more, she was probably more of a words of affirmation person, interestingly.
Okay.
I think also you crave the thing that you didn't get growing up.
Oh,
I think that there's also a little bit of truth to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be frustrating.
Money's not on the list?
Yeah. It's really frustrating because sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I'm doing so much. I just keep working, keep producing. And sometimes that isn't always in my mind appreciated, but that's not how he receives language.
Got
he
you.
receives love.
And it's
right?
like, it makes sense to you. Like, I'm perfectly clear, Mike.
I'm doing all of, don't you see all these things that I'm doing?
Yeah.
And, he's like, yes, but you haven't talked to me all day long.
Oh, man, that is so crazy. It's like a shortcut to being able to have resonant conversations and emotional connections with your partner.
Yep.
I'm learning a lot right now. Because I'm trying to think which one I am. You say you're an acts of service person. I would say that I'm probably the same. I don't need much for me. I just like doing for others.
Yep.
And I'm not serving at a soup kitchen.
Do you think that you receive and give in the same way?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I think that I receive how do I receive love? I just some intimacy, some physical intimacy now and again. For me, it doesn't go as deep as penetration, to be perfectly honest. It's something as slight as a handhold.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's what really resonates for me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I think also people can have secondary languages. And I think for the same way that I think a lot of women are acts of service, I do think a lot of men, whether it's their primary or their secondary, physical intimacy is really important. Yeah. And it's not just about sex. Sometimes it's a cuddle, it's a hug, it's a something, you know? Right. So I think that across gender lines, you see some patterns.
Yeah. It's a really interesting thing. And I think that guys stereotypically, let's say the media, society, whatever, they have firmly affixed themselves to the perception that men are just about sex. And that's really not true. Boys might be.
Sure.
But men are not. We're a bit more complex than that.
Very few men will cheat on their partner for the sex. It's for an intimacy that they don't feel that they're getting.
Right, exactly. There's some kind of...
And it's usually this person actually listened to me, or this person thought I was funny, or respected what I had to say, or gave me 15 minutes. And that's
so
really
strange,
powerful.
Right? That we think that it's all sex, right?
Right.
But it's not. Sometimes it's just, I just wanted to talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's insane. And you get these general platitudes and you start believing them. But then when you get down to just talking to people and understanding the dynamics of their relationships or marriages, it's far more real than that. It's far easier in a sense, right? It's not just all about money. It's not just all about sex. I mean,
yeah,
that's a brilliant thing. I have to check out, what's the book one more time?
The 5 Love Languages.
5 Love Languages. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Does it work with people that you just like?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it applies to everyone. On a work level, I can look at people and kind of understand, all right, what's going to motivate them?
That's exactly what I was wondering.
Is it me telling them that they're doing a good job? Or is, some people, they need the raise, and that's the only thing that will show them that you care.
What is the raise considered then in the 5 languages?
I guess it depends on how it's interpreted
gift.
By a gift.
Could be a gift, right?
It could be a gift. Yeah. Okay. Some people, they want to feel like they want to be heard, so they want that quality time with you to offer feedback. Yeah. And they want to feel like they have your undivided attention on whatever issue is stressing them that day.
So this is a good approach to management as well.
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I really do.
I mean, it's all about understanding how other people think and how to get them in a place where they're able to thrive, whatever that means for them and for you and for your business. And it works for friendships. It works for parent, child relationships. Yeah. My brother speaks a very different love language than I do.
Does he?
Yeah.
What's he about?
He is definitely a quality time person.
Okay.
So he really needs to have one-on-one attention. Yeah. My undivided ears.
Right.
He lives in San Diego, so we mostly talk on the phone. But if he senses that I'm doing other things while he's on the phone with me.
He's really offended?
He's really offended. He's like, you know what, just call me back when you actually have time to talk to me.
That's the worst, too, because I can just imagine the tone. Just call me back when you have time to talk. Yeah.
Oh, the guilt is unrelenting.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so he needs quality time. And when I go visit, he wants to go off just the two of us and have lunch or without other members of the family there.
But that's good. It's a great thing to know. And to be perfectly honest, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, yes, the small, subtle touches of my hand or my hair or my shoulders, that's definitely something that is part of my love language. But I think that it's pretty apparent that I just like having conversations with people one-on-one. So maybe I just want that personal time. So I don't know. I'm kind of learning as we go on. This is very therapeutic, Jessica. Thank you so much. Well, so you mentioned your brother. Is he younger or older?
He's younger. He's 3 years younger.
And how old are you? We're about the same age, I think. Well, you don't have to tell me. That's
No. I don't mind saying. I'm 35, but it's funny because a couple of weeks ago, someone asked me how old I was, and 32 just fell out of my mouth.
Just go with it. I'll believe you.
And I was like, okay, I guess I'm 32 now. It just felt natural to me.
Yeah.
I think because it
Is that when the bar opened 3 years ago?
The bar opened 3 years ago.
So that's when your life changed. I mean, almost directly.
Maybe,
right?
yeah. I think it's also, I think about when I was 25 and I knew people that were 35 and what that looked like
old,
to me.
Yeah.
It looked old. They felt like moms and dads and PTA members, and they drove SUVs and things of that nature. Yeah. So I see myself at 35 and I don't feel that way at all about my life or my lifestyle.
It's crazy. Thinking of what 21-year-old yourself, Jessica Sanders, would look at 35. Is it what do you think she would say? Because I think about that sometimes, and I'm like, I still think I'm cool, man. Whatever. Like, I'm drinking bourbon and playing
well,
guitar.
I have the benefit of working in a pretty youth-driven industry still,
true.
right? And I came into this industry much later than most of the people that do.
Yeah, they grow up in it.
Most people they're a busboy when they're 17 or 18, and then they move into a bar back position, and then they become a bartender. And so they've done this for 15, 20 years by the time they're my age.
Yeah.
And so it's really wild to be 35 and still be kind of in the infancy of a career.
Right. But doing something that, if you think about the life cycle of being in the industry, you start at a certain place, and really this time, I'd say in the 30s, that's when you open your place. You know, so maybe it's really no different, except that you had to learn in a different way. And a lot of people are never ready to do that either. That kind of commitment. Got money, staffing, ordering. I mean, there's so many different elements of it. Who really wants to run a business? I mean, I don't think I do, but I'll still do it, you know?
I think a lot of people think they do, and then once they get in it, they're like, oh, man,
this is what it is?
This is what it is? Yeah.
Biggest bait and switch I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, especially for a business that has such a high rate of failure.
Oh, man, no kidding. There's turnover, failure, crazy variable costs with like booze and stuff. I mean, it's insane. One might consider you mentally insane to want to pursue something like that.
Jim Meehan, who runs PDT in New York, he was giving a talk over the summer, and he said, you can't do this unless you love it, because there's no reason to do it otherwise.
Sure.
You're never going to be rich.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to be famous.
Probably not.
There's a high likelihood that it's going to crash and burn at some point.
Right.
It's just when that shoe drops. He's like, there's no reason to do it other than you just can't imagine doing anything else.
But that's the right reason to do it.
Sure.
Because if you go into it thinking, well, I'm gonna bank, it's not the right business model.
That's the biggest rude awakening.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. That is absolutely right. Because when you love something and when you go into it passion first, because you have to, you can't not do it, right? You have to. That you expect it's going to be a rocky road. You don't expect you're going to be a millionaire. You just expect, even in the darkest times when you're in the red, fucking quarter after quarter, and this is maybe a little bit information for me, but that it doesn't matter because that's what you expected, because you still love it. Sure. Despite how it abuses you.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
It is a very dysfunctional relationship, one with a, you know.
Yeah. But he loves me. He loves
right.
Me. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true.
Yeah. It's interesting. So you have one younger brother. Is that the only sibling?
Only sibling.
So so this is the thing. So I learned a bit about Michael, which is nice. And I didn't realize he's from Houston. We both kind of were in Houston at the same time. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes, and I spent my childhood there. And when my parents got divorced when I was 11, my mom's from California. Yeah. My dad's from Louisiana. And
where did they meet? How does one from California?
So my mom in the 70s was like a wild child. You know,
was she from Southern California?
She was from Southern California, so she was very much like the beach bum bunny. Hanging out on the beach, skipping class, smoking pot,
surfing?
All of that. Not a surfer, but just, you know, kind of like,
free spirit.
I guess it's like she was a little bit past the beatnik era, but just hanging out on the beach, reading poetry, doing her hippie 70s thing.
Right.
And when she was 18, she met my dad at a house across the street from where my grandparents live. They still live in that house.
And this is in California?
This is in California. Oh, okay. So my dad was born in Topeka, Kansas, but he was an Air Force brat. So they moved around a lot.
Gotcha.
And he, at that time, he had graduated high school, was in community college, and was just kind of traveling, also doing the hippie, like, wanderlust thing at 20 years old.
Yeah, 20 years old. Perfect to figure that stuff out.
Yeah. So they met in a house across the street from where my grandparents lived through mutual friends. And they knew each other for less than 3 months and got married. Wow. My mom was 18. My dad was 20.
Oh, that's not bad then.
Yeah.
They're both in that same period.
Yeah. And so he then moved her to Louisiana, which is where he was living at the time.
Gotcha.
Permanently.
Did he get stationed? Well, he was an Army brat, but
his dad was in the Air Force.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they moved to Louisiana and set up shop there. I was born about a year and a half, 2 years later. So they were married for a little bit before they had me.
Yeah, which means that it was there for love.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is great.
And they were married for about 13 years, and then they got divorced. Really ugly divorce.
Really?
And my mom was never really content living there. I mean,
in Louisiana.
Yeah, it's a very small town. Just across the river from Shreveport. It's a town called Bossier City. Really tiny town. And when she moved there, his parents were there, his sisters, his brothers. Yeah. And she also was a stay-at-home mom, so she didn't have a large network of friends around her. Yeah. And so she just had no inclination to stay. So after my parents got divorced, which was like a long divorce, it took like 2.5 years, multiple reconciliations, and
when you're 11, which is
split up.
Right when you're trying to figure shit out too. Right?
Yeah, I was in the 5th grade. Yeah, not fun. So we left Louisiana and moved to San Diego, which is where my mom's people are. Okay. And so I went to middle school, high school, and ultimately college there.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Yep. I went to UC San Diego, and then but the whole time, probably right around the time that I was 10 or 11, when my parents were getting a divorce, I had one singular goal, which was to move to New York City.
Really?
That was all I cared about.
What was it? Did you see Barefoot in the Park with Jane Fonda or something?
Well, I really wanted to work in government, but I wanted to work in like public policy. Okay. And so I felt like a big city had like a lot of
UN's there, right?
Say it again?
The UN's there.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, like this is the epicenter of diplomacy, and it's a big city with big problems, and I'm going to go out and change the world. And so I was extremely studious in high school. And
would you say that any clubs? I was like in debate and all that.
All of the clubs. Yeah. There was not a club I did not belong to. So Michael likes to joke with me that he envisions my high school years as me being like Tracy Flick in the movie Election.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Which is not that far from the truth, except for the sleeping with professors and being a little like truly off her hinges.
She's kind of messed up. Yeah.
But in terms of that level of ambition, that's not too far off. I mean, Spanish club, yearbook, drama, debate. Were you like
a real straight arrow too? Or did you like kind of party a bit?
No.
Not yet, right?
I had first of all, my mother was very strict because she was a single mom at that point and couldn't really keep an eye on us. Right. And so her solution to that was to lock it down. Gotcha. So very strict, never partied ever. No kidding, and just was...
Totally, like you said, studious,
very academic driven, because that was my one place to escape and immerse myself in something that wasn't home. Yeah,
right? Because I'm sure you were getting good grades, getting recognition, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So what was the main? Would you study then at? You said University.
So I went to UC San Diego. Yeah. I had been accepted to go to Georgetown and to NYU, and I couldn't afford it.
No. Oh yeah.
So
really
I was heartbroken.
Expensive.
I got partial scholarships, but it wasn't enough to cover the full ride. Yeah. And I remember at the time being 17 and thinking, this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen
because
to me.
You didn't get to
I got in and I couldn't go. And I was like, man, I wish they wouldn't have even admitted me, because then I wouldn't have known what it felt like to not have that thing. Right. Looking back on it now, I realize I was totally ill prepared to move 3,000 miles away and be in a college environment. I had no social skills at that point because I didn't really.
Well, it wasn't about people. It was about you and your mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, making it better.
But I was completely emotionally ill prepared. So in hindsight, it was a blessing that I didn't go.
Just toss yourself into the biggest epicenter, as you say.
Exactly. Yeah. So I went to UC San Diego. I was a urban studies major, which is kind of one of those like made up majors. That's an amalgam of political science, sociology, economics, and I definitely partied in college.
Was it your time to like?
Yes.
Get funky?
Yeah. So my compromise with my mom was, okay, I will agree to stay, because my next choice after NYU and Georgetown didn't pan out was UCLA. Oh, and I was like, okay, I got a full scholarship to UCLA. I'll take it.
No kidding. That's amazing.
And she's like, no.
Too far?
No.
Too far away?
Too far away.
Yeah.
And I think she knew that I wasn't emotionally or socially mature enough.
That's a big one.
For that.
Yeah.
So she said, no way. And I said, okay, well, here's the compromise. I will stay in San Diego, but you have to let me live on campus. And that way I could at least...
kind of down the road, right? But you get your freedom.
Yeah, it was probably like 30 minutes from home.
Oh, not bad. Yeah.
So I was like, I want to live on campus. I want to have that experience.
Yeah.
So I lived on campus, and it was just far enough away for me to get into a little bit of trouble. And I made great friends, and I had a dorm of 8 girls. It was the first time in my life I had like girlfriends.
Oh, cool.
So that was a whole skill set I had to learn of what it meant to be a good girlfriend.
Yeah.
And
I'm not a girlfriend. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be a good girlfriend?
Well, I later learned, all those rules, like you can't date your ex's, your friend's ex.
The bro code, but converted.
Exactly. That was one that I broke and lost a friendship over. So I learned, okay, you're not allowed to do that. That's not okay. And so that was a hard lesson to learn.
Interesting.
For sure.
Was that when you had your most formative dating experiences in college? Yeah.
Yep. Had my first really serious boyfriend, long-term boyfriend when I was in college. And it was great. I am really thankful that I didn't go farther away because I wasn't ready for it, but it was just close enough to be...
Kind of like a safety net in a sense,
it was a
right?
Safety
You
net,
could always go back if...
So I studied urban studies and UCS.
Studies. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not. It's
no,
not
you can laugh.
But...
It's a completely made up major. But it was interesting because UCSD is a college that's very science driven. So a lot of people go there because they are pre-med.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of off in a weird... UCSD is divided into 5 colleges.
Okay.
And so each college kind of has a focus. So
sure.
I was
a different kind of person
too. So Thurgood Marshall College was where a lot of the liberal arts students went, political science and sociology folks. So that's where I was at. And again, still focused on moving to New York. So after college, I worked for a year or so, and then the first chance I got,
you got out.
I started to apply to jobs. I got a job, and it was funny because I was so poor. I had like next to no money, and I had to save up for 6 months to afford the trip to New York to go on interviews.
Oh, wow. So okay. So you did obtain said urban studies degree?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And so at that point, you're like, got no money.
I got to get out of here.
But I got to get prospects, and I really still have my eyes on New York.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I worked, and actually I had been working full time pretty much the whole time.
What kind of stuff were you doing?
Office work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I worked for a general contractor who my urban studies degree really impressed him because he thought, she wants to build cities someday.
She wants to build an urban.
Yeah. So I'm here. I'd like to plan the urbans, please. So I worked and I saved up for 6 months to afford a plane ticket and 2 nights hotel so that I could go to New York and go on job interviews. And I went on job interviews, and I expected the process of finding a job to take a while. And at that time...
So you'd plan for weeks staying there, something like that?
Well, I thought like it would take me a year to get a job offer.
Oh, wow,
so
okay.
I was like, okay, I'll go on these interviews and I'll weigh my options and I'll see what happens. For some reason, I just never thought that it would happen. I think because I had been so grossly disappointed before.
Yeah, you resented it. You resented New York.
Yes. So I went on a few job interviews, and I got a job offer right away. Pretty immediately.
So one interview, and you get an offer the
first set of interviews,
I
got a job offer in the car on the way back to the airport.
They called you.
They called me and they said, yes, we would love to hire you. And I said, great. Well, I'm on my flight back to San Diego, so let me think about it. Send me the offer letter. And when I got back, I followed up and got the details, and they said, well, here's the catch. We need you to start in 28 days.
So a month later, they want you to start.
They want me to start in a month.
Okay.
And I said, well, that's going to be kind of a problem because I had an apartment at that time. I had a dog. I had a boyfriend. I had a life. And I didn't think that I would get hired anywhere right away.
Yeah, you were thinking it's going to take a year.
It's going to take a year. So I thought I was like getting way ahead of the curve by starting to interview now.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they needed me to start pretty immediately. And then at that point, I was terrified that if I didn't take that job,
none would follow.
None would follow it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I broke up with the boyfriend.
Wow. The first long-term boyfriend, right?
Second boyfriend. This one was less long-term.
Oh, okay. So he probably, did he give a shit?
No, he was heartbroken.
Oh, good. Well, at least you're a heartbreaker.
Yeah. Well, and we had a long, dating from afar thing when I first moved to New York, which lasted about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then 5 more minutes.
Really, really
and then
tough.
5 more minutes.
Back and forth.
That was terrible.
Yeah. How did the dog fare?
Oh, the dog I gave to a friend, so the dog was in good hands. But I had to sell my car. I had to get rid of all my things. I begged my grandparents for $2,000 to help get me started, and then I had to find a roommate. Man. So I had 4 weeks to move to New York, and I again was broke.
Right.
So I scrounged up some money. I borrowed some money to fly, and this time I could only afford to stay one night in a hotel.
Oh, wow.
To go find a roommate. And this was before Craigslist existed.
Yeah, or Airbnb or any of that stuff, right?
I had a girlfriend who was living in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I had her send me a Village Voice in the mail, right? I had her FedEx.
So you would know, you'd be keen on.
Yeah, I had her FedEx me a Village Voice, and this was like when you were still circling ads in the paper to find roommates. And so I had set up a few appointments from my Village Voice ad thing, and then I thought, well, this is really risky, like looking for something in the paper. So at that time,
why was it risky? Just because?
Well, I was a 24-year-old girl.
Oh, the innocence of it, and like, someone's gonna kill me, kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into, and in the Village Voice, the ads are like 20
huge,
words.
Right?
It's so you have no clue who these people are. But at that time, there was a groundbreaking new service that just launched called Roommates.com.
I've heard of it.
Yes. So Roommates.com, it was $129 to join Roommates.com for a 3-month subscription. And I joined Roommates.com for the sole purpose of finding a place to live. And so I had set up, between the Village Voice and Roommates.com, I had set up 10 appointments. So I flew in on a red eye to go to New York.
Right.
I landed at 6 a.m, and then I just hit the pavement. And I went to all these places to meet these prospective roommates.
Right. Are they people kind of renting out rooms?
Basically? Yeah, renting out rooms. In some cases, renting out beds. I mean, there were some really awful...
Squalid.
It was just incredible. Like, there was one situation where it was a building that wasn't zoned to be a residential building. It was technically a commercial building. So there was no shower in the apartment. What? And the girl that lived there was like, oh, it's no big deal. I just shower at the gym across the street. And I thought, so now I have to factor in a gym membership into my rent every month. And what happens if you have to use the bathroom in the middle of the night? How does this work? So that was a no-go. It had no kitchen. She cooked on a hot plate.
God, hobo living.
Yeah, and it was in Soho. So, you're in like the poshest part of New York City, but you're living in this
It's so crazy, isn't it? The contrast.
There was one ad that was a Village Voice ad. The person advertised that they were a young professional looking for someone to share a 1-bedroom apartment. I showed up. It's a 1-room apartment. So it was a studio, and the young professional in question was a 45-year-old man.
Oh, no.
And his idea of roommateship was that I would sleep on the futon and he would sleep on the floor next to me.
Oh, my God. That's strange.
Hella creepy.
Yeah.
That's not a roommate. That's a concubine.
That is a concubine, yeah. Or it's Patrick Bateman.
It was really creepy.
Yeah.
And so that was a no-go. One place, was really expensive. And then the very last place was how I met Michael, because he was the 10th.
No way. He was the guy renting out? He was the 10th.
So his story was that, and I'm sure he told you this, but he was living with his friend Roble, who was a chef. Roble was going to go off and be a famous chef and do a cooking show. So Michael needed to find a roommate. And he had interviewed a few people to be his roommate, and none of them worked out for whatever reason. And he was really apprehensive about living with a girl.
Sure.
But I was super studious and
proper, right?
Proper.
I mean, I'm not saying you're naive.
I also was definitely rocking the lesbian chic at this time.
Oh, why is that?
Terrible fashion sense at this time. Pleated front jeans, clogs. I mean, total butch haircut. It was not a good look for me. That was a dark time.
But for Michael, it's like, oh man, no, nothing, no signs going off. Perfect.
Exactly. This is great, right? So he was the 10th person, and he and Roble I came, and he lived in Harlem at the time, and I was super nervous about it because I thought, man, I don't know about living in Harlem, because the only thing I knew about living in Harlem at that point was like what I saw
in Harlem Nights,
or a New Jack City. Yeah.
Oh man.
So I was convinced that I was going to be raped and murdered in Harlem.
They would see you and they wouldn't want to be you.
Exactly. So and then of course the building that Michael lived in at the time was next door to like a low security corrections facility for people that were like purse snatchers or really like non-serious crimes.
Right.
Every day at 3:00, all the prisoners would be allowed to come out on the front stoop and smoke a cigarette. And so long story short, they interviewed me. Michael and Rubley interviewed me. They asked me like a barrage of questions about myself.
Imagine, yeah.
I remember the most significant one was, do you have any problems with porn in the house?
That's an alarming question.
It was like, are you clean? Do you have a reliable source of income?
Oh, this all makes sense. Yeah,
what kind of music do you like?
Sure.
How do you feel about porn in the house?
What the hell? Was it their live stream at the time or something?
I mean, they were 25-year-old guys. So
that's funny.
Same story.
What year was this, by the way?
This was 2003.
Okay.
Yep. So same story. When I got into the cab to leave, because before that 10th meeting, I had met with a girl who lived in Hoboken, and super cute apartment, very girly.
Yeah.
She was great. And I thought, okay, well, that's probably going to be it. I could afford it.
Right.
And then Michael called me and he said, okay, well, we discussed it. We deliberated. And
he used the word deliberated,
of course he did.
he?
And he's like, we've deliberated. And if you would like the room, it's yours. I just need to know by the end of the week. And so I said, okay, well, I'll think about it. I'm going to fly back home and I'll let you know. And so on the plane, I thought, well, the girl has a nicer apartment.
It's in Hoboken.
It's in Hoboken, though.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, am I really moving 3,500 miles across the country to live in New Jersey?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
So that's not New York. And I wanted to live in New York.
Officially, you're right. Totally.
So I told myself, okay, I'll move in with this guy. I'll be his roommate for 6 months.
Okay.
And if it's an abysmal failure, in 6 months, I will have had a steady income for 6 months in New York, and I'll leave. Yeah, I'll sign a 6-month lease and then I'll bounce.
You'll find another place in New York, or you'll just leave New York?
I'll leave that apartment.
Gotcha.
So he was going to be like my temporary fix.
He was the litmus,
to get me into Manhattan, and I was going to live there for 6 months, and then in 6 months, I thought I would have made so much money at that point that I would be able to bounce and go find my own apartment or a better apartment that's not in Harlem, where girls like me get raped and murdered. So that was my plan.
Yeah. That's a good plan. Sounds good so far.
It's great. So when I moved from San Diego to New York, every single thing I owned fit in 2 suitcases.
That's actually pretty admirable.
It was very freeing.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, I thought, man, to only be weighed down by 2 suitcases in your life at that point.
That's the summary of your life.
It was great.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I took the same red eye that I had been taking every trip. I took that same red eye and I landed in New York. I got the keys from Michael, who was on his way to work at 7 in the morning.
Right.
And I had to take the bus that day from Port Authority, which is, to this day, to me, the scariest place.
I've been there and taken a bus, and I think that someone's going to offer to give me crack and a hand job at any moment.
Sidebar. One of my favorite games is, which is the scariest environment to be stuck in?
Oh, Jesus.
An off-track betting salon, a check cashing place at 3 in the morning, or the Port Authority. The Port Authority wins every time.
Every time, right.
And whenever I have this debate with people, whenever they try to argue against it, I always point to the fact that shortly after I moved to New York, 2 girls were kidnapped and beaten and raped
in the Port Authority
on the West Side Highway. They were,
okay.
And the person that they arrested for this crime said that it couldn't possibly have been him because he was getting a hand job from a prostitute in the Port Authority at the time. Which is a
great alibi.
So that was his alibi.
That's a
if
wonderful
that's the
alibi.
Kind of person where their alibi is that they were getting a hand job in the Port Authority, that's not a kind of place I need to be at any point in my life.
Good point.
So that same day that I landed, I had to take a bus from the Port Authority to IKEA to buy furniture for my room and sheets. And then, the rest was history. I was Michael's platonic roommate for the 6 months came and went.
What was like because were you guys going out a lot, or were you staying at home watching horror movies? Like what was that dynamic
keep in mind, I had my 6-month plan.
Yeah. So, sure.
So my plan was,
did you not want to get close because you knew you were going to head out?
Partially that, and also I wanted to save up as much money as possible.
Right.
So that I could eventually get my own apartment.
Gotcha. So that means not going out much.
I wasn't going out at all. And Michael was going out a lot. And he worked in advertising at the time. So he had the kind of job that afforded him the luxury of going out a lot. And I just wasn't down. I was there to work. I went back into studious mode. I'm here to work. That's all I'm here to do.
I'm here to work.
I'm not here to make friends, not show friends. It's show business, right? And so I was working a lot, and finally after about 4 or 5 months, he convinced me to come out with him and some friends. And
was this
like,
your first time, like, kind of going
like
out?
really going out in New York City?
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah. He's like, look, you got to come out and have some fun.
You're just
you have to.
Yeah,
you
you're
can't
stuck
stay in
at
your room
home
and work
all the
time.
time.
So he invited me out with some friends, and I was like, okay, he's all right. I can hang out with this guy.
Sure.
And we just became really good friends. And so the 6-month mark came and went. I also realized very quickly what a complete pain it is to move in New York.
I can't imagine.
City. It's easier to move cross country than it is to move within the borough
city.
of Manhattan.
How do you even do that? You get a truck, but a truck's expensive.
Are
there trucks?
There's 2 U-Haul facilities in Manhattan.
That's it.
And it is a race to the bottom over who's bad.
Gosh.
It's crazy expensive. The customer service is deplorable.
They don't give a shit. Like,
they don't give a shit.
Us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the 6-month mark came and went. We ended up staying in that Harlem apartment together for 2 years.
No kidding.
And then we moved into a new apartment on the Lower East Side together.
But it was still, at this point, it was still platonic?
Still platonic.
Yeah.
And so that went on for about 4 years. Like
platonic.
That. Totally
platonicity.
Platonicity. I dated other people.
Yeah.
He dated other people. We both had some significant relationships with other people in that time.
Sure.
When we were single, we were each other's best wingmen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he told me about that.
Yeah. And then one night we just weren't platonic anymore. And
you got, was it a night out of drinking? Was it a simple Hugh Grant flick? what was it?
So it was one of those perfect days. I had gotten a really huge promotion at work.
Oh, great.
Roble had signed the deal for his cooking show.
That's
and this was 2008.
Okay. Oh, it's not too long ago.
2007. It was 2007. Okay. Roble had signed his first deal, so he got like his first like really big paycheck.
I'm gonna be famous.
Yeah, this is really happening. Now, mind you, when Roble moved out the first time, that allowed me to enter into the picture.
Yeah.
He told Michael he was going to move to LA, but he only made it to Brooklyn.
Oh, jeez.
So Michael was really pissed because he had gone through all this trouble of having to find a new roommate, and Roble just moved across the river to Brooklyn.
Man.
But Roble finally got a deal. He finally got his deal. He got a big paycheck. I got a huge promotion that day. So I forget what happened to Michael, but he had gotten like some big award at work. So all of us had this perfect day where these awesome things were happening in our lives.
Everything was aligned. Yeah.
Everything was aligned. And so we went out. We went into the Lenox Lounge, which sadly is no longer there. But it was an iconic bar in Harlem on 125th Street. Jazz club, supper club type of experience.
Kind of dark.
Beautiful, dark, smoky.
Yeah.
It had, the big leather booths, banquettes.
Yeah. It wasn't red leather, was
legends sang in this place.
Oh, really?
Duke Ellington and Billie Holiday, and just an incredible, iconic venture that was on 125th Street and Lenox Avenue. And we would go there a lot. And at that time, Harlem was not as gentrified as it is now, but we were kind of on the cusp of seeing that happen. And so the Lenox Lounge, started to become... I knew that it was a bad sign when I saw the digital jukebox go in.
Oh, no.
And that was a heartbreaking day.
So it was a casualty of the gentrification.
It was, for sure.
Oh, that's
for
terrible.
sure. And now there's a massive high-rise there.
Yeah.
And
the money came in.
I heard Robert De Niro bought the building. I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
But Harlem is a very different place than it was
So I hear.
then.
Yeah, I've never been
Very
there.
different. But yeah, so we went to the Lenox Lounge at about 8:30 at night, and we left at 6 the next morning.
You were there for 10 hours?
Yes.
Doing
10 hours.
What?
Listening to jazz and
Talking?
celebrating and, feeling very alive and young.
Were you drinking at that point?
Yeah, we were drinking.
What were you drinking?
Oh, God.
What's the best accompaniment to the...
So in those days, this was right before we discovered like cocktail bars in New York City. So we were still on like Coors Lights and Maker's Mark Neat.
Gotcha.
That was our go-to. Coors Light, Maker's Mark Neat.
Yeah.
That was our jam. But yeah,
lots of conversation. Obviously, everybody's totally stoked on all the great opportunities.
We just felt so happy.
Yeah.
We just felt that was probably one of the happiest days
that you can recall.
of us, the three of us hanging out, celebrating. it was at that point, I had been in New York for about 4 years at that point, and I just felt like it was finally clicking, because New York can be very much like a roller coaster, especially in those early years. I remember some days I would love it and I would think, oh my God, I can't believe this is finally happening. I'm finally here. And some days it's like, why did I move here? This is the worst decision.
Because it's so
ever.
hard to just
it's
exist,
hard.
Right?
It's hard to live. You're paycheck to paycheck all the time. It's very expensive. Whatever mood you wake up in, you better hope it's a good one, because it's going to be an assault on you for the rest of the day.
Oh man, why is that?
But it's also great. It was good for someone like me, because New York, everyone jokes about people in New York being rude, and they're not rude. They're actually the nicest people in the world. They just require a very high level of self-sufficiency.
Gotcha.
And they have no patience.
Little tolerance for bullshit.
Yeah. So I came into it already pretty independent, and it just kind of strengthened that quality for me.
Yeah. So you think that was something that you needed to go through? I mean, it seems like a gauntlet of sorts. So you go from kind of having this wonderful phase in college where everything's enlightened. You have social skills now. You're going through the dating world. But New York really cemented your ability to be an adult, maybe?
It cemented my ability to be an adult and just to be an open-minded person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about the people that I dated during that time, the kinds of friendships that I had. You know, I worked with a woman who was a dominatrix by night.
No kidding.
So that was fascinating to learn about that.
That's still fascinating.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
I had infinite questions for her.
Yeah. Does it ever get a little tiresome? Oh yeah. Okay, Jessica. The kind of whip I like is not a Chinese whip, but it's a Brazilian whip.
I was like, how do you find these people? And she's like, oh, they find me, you know?
Oh, great. That's great.
And then I also became really fascinated with her ability to create like a persona. And you know, she was a secretary by day and did this other thing by night. And so it just taught me to, you know, it helped broaden my horizons and make me realize that there's more than just, you know, the 400 square feet of my apartment.
Yeah.
And, it also, you know, really taught me, you never know who people really are, what they're really about, what they're really into or passionate. It's very rare that you find someone that is a totally open book.
Totally transparent.
Yeah.
It's insane. And I have to be honest, like, everybody that's come in here, I had one, I'll allude to it, but I had one experience in which I think that, and it was somebody really close to me, they were just bullshitting me. And I was like, dude, just be real with me.
Sure.
I've known you for over 10 years. And it was always so scripted. And it's like, but beyond that, every single person that's come in here has been totally transparent and not hiding and just self-effacing, which is a great, great thing. And I think maybe that experience probably helped you just be real and understand yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, and New York is great because whatever eccentricities you have, whatever past you have, you are accepted there. There is a part of town for you. You know, if I guarantee that woman lived on the dominatrix block of wherever she lived.
Wherever
and
that may be.
You learn how to build your own family. You learn how to build your own community and rally around people that are of like minds. And not necessarily that they have similar backgrounds, but people that have like temperaments and similar values. So
you came into your own, suffice to say.
Absolutely.
So you have this one magical, hopefully there's been many since, but you had this one magical evening with Mike.
Yep.
And it was surrounded by all these great opportunities presenting themselves, a bit of a wave of positivity. And so you guys make the call to be together.
Yeah. Yeah. We hooked up, and, you know, of course the next day you wake up and you think, oh my God, that was the stupidest thing ever.
Sure. Wow.
But then of course, so then you go into survival mode and you're like, okay, we're not going to make it awkward.
Right.
We're totally going to be cool.
Always makes it awkward.
We're totally going to be cool. It's no big deal. It's
right.
like it never even happened. And so then we kind of like started to hook up with some level of frequency, right? And
did you suspect that did it feel like there was an emotion, there was an emotional intimacy there beyond the friendship, or was it just a physical thing?
Oh, sure.
So you couldn't deny that you were building some emotional intimacy as well.
Of course. I mean, we were very close friends at that point.
Right.
And I was very determined to not let it get uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And, you know, being the strong, independent woman that I was at the time, I was thinking, okay, well, you know, I'm not going to get emotionally attached. Yes, he's my friend, and yes, we're having this intimacy, but that's all it is.
Sure.
You know?
Oh, and you're putting you're in control.
Exactly. We are friends with benefits, that is the ideal situation.
Sure.
But also aside from that, we just really enjoyed being around each other.
Yeah.
And so then it did start to get uncomfortable.
What did something happen? Or?
Well, because we were still, we weren't together, like we weren't dating. So that left room for us to date other people.
Oh man, I can't imagine that's easy.
And especially, being a guy in their 20s, the filter of, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't bring a girl home to the home I share with a girl that I'm sleeping with, right? That's not a good thing. So it got really uncomfortable for that reason. He was still dating other girls.
Right.
And
did you date other guys?
I dated other guys, but I never brought anyone home because
you actually saw things, like you saw some boundaries.
I just felt like it was tacky. I don't know. There was something but also I've never been one to sleep around. So it wasn't like these dates were going anywhere physical. I just intrinsically felt that it was kind of a tacky thing to do.
Gotcha.
And we had certain restaurants that Michael and I frequented, and we had sort of made kind of an unspoken rule. All right, if you're going to go on dates, don't take them here. Because what I didn't want to happen was for him to go on a bad date somewhere.
And then it ruins it for you.
And it ruins that place for him. And now I can't go there either, right?
I think that it probably became pretty apparent, because it's apparent to me, at least from these small details, you guys were falling for each other, and that's why this stuff hurt.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And so what did you guys have a conversation? Was it a kiss in the rain? What was the moment where like, fine, we're going to stop fucking around and we're going to do this?
So this whole thing of us, kind of screwing around, but dating other people and it being weird, this lasted for about a year. Mm-hmm. And finally, it just wasn't working for me anymore. I was really not liking...
A year? Oh, that's got to be soul crushing.
It was terrible. And I just didn't like the person that I was becoming, because I was becoming increasingly jealous as this year went on.
Sure, you were allowing yourself to feel for some dude who may not be feeling the same things. Yeah.
So I decided we can't be roommates anymore. This isn't going to work. So I went and moved out. I got an apartment in Brooklyn.
Really? By yourself?
By myself. And Michael got an apartment in the East Village. Mm-hmm. And what I think is really telling is the day that we moved me into my apartment first. Mm-hmm. The day we moved Michael into his apartment, I remember saying, okay, well, you're all moved in, so I'm going to go now. I'm going to get on the train go to Brooklyn, where I live now. Yeah. And I didn't even make it to the subway before Michael was like, hey, do you want to have dinner? Right? But he let you leave. He let me leave.
Yeah.
So we were living in two separate apartments and still trying to stay away from each other and I was like, I'm determined to do my own thing.
Right.
And this went on for probably 6 or 7 months.
No kidding.
And we were still hanging out and being friends, trying really hard not to be physically intimate with each other because I was trying to distance myself.
Sure.
But then you'd fall into that situation, and we just kept coming back to being together. And I remember Michael had to go to his best friend's wedding in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And so my girlfriends at the time, we all went out for a ladies' night and, got a little tipsy. And of course, the girlfriends around me are like, girl, you need to just stop this nonsense. And he is never going to come after you. So you just need to let it go. And so that night I said, you know what? You're right. Fuck him. I'm going to,
And I can see what's around the corner.
So I was like, fuck him. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I'm never calling him again. I'll be
over it.
I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being dicked around by this guy, right?
Who wouldn't be tired?
If he really cares about me, he would have announced it long ago. He would have fought for me. Yeah. Forget it. So that night, I enjoyed the company of another and had a great time. The very next day, Michael called me and asked me to be his girlfriend.
Oh my God.
So he's at this wedding.
He's in Mexico?
He's in Mexico.
What do you think happened for him?
I think he was at his best friend's wedding.
And he saw love.
And he saw someone else in love and he was feeling lonely. So he called me and he said, I've really been thinking about it while I've been here. And I really care for you, and I really think that we could be a real couple.
Yeah.
And I was pissed. I was so mad.
God damn it. No kidding. Oh, it's like just a little bit too little too late, Michael.
So I told him, I said, you know what? Why don't you ask me in person? Because I was convinced that the only reason why he was calling was because he was lonely in Mexico.
Yeah, maybe drunk.
I don't know. And I said, you know what? Tell you what, when you come back in 8 days, why don't you find me?
You make it legitimate.
And you come and ask me in person.
Wow.
And so, and it's really telling of our, I said we're never in the same mood at the same time. during that time, we were never feeling the same way for each other at the same time. So we played this cat and mouse game forever. I was really into him. He wasn't into me. Mm-hmm. I had said, fuck it, I'm not into you anymore.
Then he comes around,
right?
Yeah.
And so this went on for a year. And then finally, so he came back from Mexico. And a couple weeks later, we go out to dinner. And he's like, no, I'm really serious. Like, I really would like you to be my girlfriend. And I said, okay, why don't we make it a probationary thing for 3 months? As you can tell, I'm very into probation periods.
I guess so.
I said, all right, well, let's see how it goes for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And I said, but the most important thing is I do consider you my best friend. I don't want to lose that. So if we get the sense that this isn't working, I think we need to end it and just agree to be friends.
Right.
And we dated for a year, and then he proposed.
Oh, wow.
And then we got married.
Were you were you still living in New York then?
We got engaged in New York. Mm-hmm. And then during this whole time of dating and the cat and mouse game was when we discovered cocktail bars.
Yeah.
And we started hanging out in them a lot, and we became really interested in that. And so when we started to date seriously, before we were engaged, Michael said, well, what do you think about moving somewhere else and opening a bar, opening a restaurant?
What do you think of that?
I was apprehensive at first just because I had no experience doing it. Like Michael had at least worked in restaurants before. He had waited tables.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I had no experience in that world.
Yeah.
And I knew it was a very risky thing. And it seemed too fun to be something that you could do for real life.
That's a good point.
I was like,
one for you, one for me.
It seemed too fun. I thought, surely people don't make a living doing that. That seems too easy, right? Yeah. It seemed too easy. I thought there's no way that anyone does this for real because it's fun. And
so you thought, anyway.
So I thought, right. And he's like, no, I really think we could do this. We're both clearly passionate about it. And we were also at that point in our careers where we were looking at our bosses and thinking, okay, do I really want to be this person in 5 years, 10 years?
Exactly.
And
I was working my own mark.
I was working for someone who was particularly terrible at that time.
What was the job then?
I was working for Forbes magazine.
Oh, no shit.
And I was in their marketing department. So Michael and I had complementary jobs. He was in ad sales. I was in ad marketing. So my job was to come up with ideas that someone like him would go out and sell. Gotcha. So I was the steak and he was the sizzle.
Makes
right?
sense. Okay.
But the man that I was working for at the time was incredibly ego driven.
Yeah.
And
was he older or just slightly older?
Like late 30s, early 40s.
Okay.
Definitely a Patrick Bateman type, very put together, very, Armani suits and super wealthy and just kind of a prick, to be honest with you. But he also, the one good thing I will say is that he drove me to be better all the time.
In which sense?
In the sense that he was never satisfied until it was perfect.
Got it.
And so
committed to quality.
He was very committed to quality, and he also had a whatever it takes attitude. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I appreciated about him was that he would stay in the office until you were done. And I had bosses previously that they would take off.
Sure.
And go to dinner and let you just stay there and toil away.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm going to sit here until you present me a perfect product.
Wow.
And
that's good because you're like, well, he's putting time in too.
He's putting time in too, right? And he was a real asshole. And I didn't respect him as a human being but at the same time,
but his work ethic,
he had an incredible work ethic. Yeah. And I respected that about him. But I also looked at him and I thought, man, he's really terrible to other people. I don't want to be that in 5 years, right?
Yeah, he's a terrible human.
Yeah, I don't want to be so driven by work that I forget how to be compassionate to.
It's the Don Draper syndrome.
For sure.
Wonderful work ethic, mind, creativity, terrible ethics.
Exactly.
Yeah, morality.
Exactly. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the Don Draper example, but that's pretty spot on.
God, because you look up to Don. How could someone be so brilliant? But then you're like, he's so flawed. He will never be truly loved or truly love anybody else.
Right.
Because he doesn't like himself.
Sure.
It's just a deep, rich psychological case, Mr. Draper. But yeah, I imagine there's lots of people like that.
But I was also like one of the only women in that entire
really?
office. It was a very male-driven workplace, which was cool. I never was made to feel excluded from anything because I was a woman, and I never felt like I was denied opportunities because of that. But I also was looking above me, and the only person who was in an executive position
As
in
a
that
woman?
company as a woman was Steve Forbes' daughter.
Holy
So
shit!
I
She's
thought-
or fathered into
Yeah,
it.
and she's an incredibly brilliant person, but I thought, man, you know, I don't have the last name Forbes, so the chances of me really rising in this company
So sobering.
are pretty unrealistic.
Okay.
Quite frankly.
Yeah.
So it was at that time where I was like, I really don't want to do this for the rest of my life.
Right.
But we really were drawn to this other life that we saw. And so Michael said, this was before we even got engaged. He said, I really think that we could do this. And we had both been saving up money. Our entire time in New York. We both had financial planners. And he especially was pretty financially savvy. And so I said, yeah, you know what? I think maybe we could do that. We should definitely
think
look
about
into
it
that.
at least, right? Yeah.
And he proposed to me. We got engaged. And then we moved. He proposed to me in October of 2009. We moved to Austin in February of 2010.
Okay.
And then we got married in May.
Oh, cool. In Austin?
In Austin.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I didn't plan my own wedding because I didn't live here.
Yeah.
And
How
so,
would you?
So my mother-in-law planned it.
Okay. Did your father move up to Austin at some point? Or he was still in Louisiana?
My dad still lives in Louisiana.
Okay.
Yeah.
But his new wife or whatever, she was the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, Mike's mom is the one that planned the wedding.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike's mom planned the wedding, which was fine by me because I'm really not a wedding person.
I think weddings are great, and I am tickled pink that Lydia's making our invitations downstairs, man, because I can't do it, and she's got the skills. I'm just gonna
even with your masterful Photoshop skills.
Yeah, I mean, when the pictures from the wedding come out, then maybe I'll tweak them,
Oh,
but
yeah.
in terms of like actually analog in your hand paper invitations and stuff, like there's no better person to do that stuff.
Now that I'm older, I appreciate it a lot more. I wish I could do my wedding all over again.
Oh, really?
Now that I'm older and I have a better sense of my tastes. But at the time, it just seemed like such an extravagance.
Yeah.
And we had a beautiful wedding. I wouldn't change it for the world. But at the time, I was like, man, who cares about spending money on these flowers?
I totally know.
It's just ridiculous. It's for, it lasts a day and then it's over.
Right. There's other things to spend money. Travel is the thing to spend money.
Oh,
on,
yeah. Well,
always.
the biggest regret I have is not buying a house in Austin with that money.
I don't even
5
want to
years
talk
ago.
about that. Man,
I know it's a sore subject. I realize.
It's like Jeff. I was talking to Jeff Boley the other night, and he had an amazing lot that's worth millions now that he had to sell to move to the West Coast.
I cannot wait to listen to Jeff Boley's
Oh, it's
podcast.
incredible.
I cannot
It is
wait.
so incredible. He's such a great dude.
Yeah.
So we're here. You guys, when is I think I went to the 3rd anniversary. So you've been open at Drink.Well now for over 3 years, right?
Correct.
And so when is the anniversary for?
4th is the end of February.
Oh, that's killer.
It'll be 4 years old.
Do you think it's aged you a bit?
I definitely think it's aged me a lot. A lot.
It's because it's hard dealing with that.
The hours are long.
Yeah.
It's hard on your body. It's hard on your emotional health.
Yeah.
And because really your job is to take care of other people.
Right.
Right. That's
Totally
that's
selfless.
your only lot in life is
Yeah.
to take care of other people. And for the most part, you spend most of your time taking care of your staff.
Yeah.
And so, people always say, "Oh, do you, Mike, have kids?" And I say, "Well, I have
You've got kids.
I have 11 children.
Sure,
They
exactly.
all need my attention. They are very expensive. They occasionally need their diaper changed.
That is absolutely true. They fight with each other.
They fight with each other.
Yeah.
They have needs. They need to be recognized as individuals. So, to me, that's the hardest part is the hours, and you give of yourself like to the point where your gas tank is
Just
empty some days.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have anything left to give even yourself.
Right.
And so,
and that's bad because then you don't take care of yourself.
well, and
can't.
as an industry, I think we're all coming to a reckoning where that's concerned. Because especially in this, cocktail world, most of the people that have made a name for themselves are now getting to be in their 30s and 40s, and in some cases their early 50s.
Right, and you cannot live that same lifestyle.
You can't. You cannot
can
do it.
see it on people's faces now.
For sure.
The
I
lives
look
they
at
live.
pictures of Michael and I the day that Drink.Well opened and pictures of us now, and some of them we look 10 years older, not 3 or 4 years older than we are. And so now it's like, all right, how do we reverse this trade? Right?
Because you can, once you're in that steady state mode, God forbid, but I know there's ups and downs still, but there is a point in which you can just take your hands off of it a little bit and say, okay, it's going to exist. It's going to do well.
Right.
But I need to focus on, it's the era of Jessica.
Well, we have the luxury of having a successful business, right? I can't imagine how people that do this that really are struggling to like just get butts in seats and get people in the door. And, you know, we have the benefit of at least knowing that, you know, our business is doing well. And it's because we put in so much hard work, and that's something to be proud of.
I'll tell you this, you know, I've been around the world a bit, different areas of Asia and soon to be Europe and stuff. But Drink.Well is still one of the best places in the world. There is a vibe and an ambiance that has not been captured elsewhere, and especially hasn't been captured in Austin. So you guys have done something that's truly unique, which in that industry, in having a cocktail, that experience as a customer, that's hard to come by. A unique experience, you know, where it's surprisingly cordial and surprisingly laxed, but yet beautifully detailed. Like it over delivers because you don't expect it, because it's like, it feels like Cheers, right?
Right.
People know your name, everybody's friendly, but you get a cocktail that not is only creatively crafted from name to ingredients, but it's executed perfectly.
Well, thank you.
How do you get that quality every time? What is that? How do you do that?
You just accept that that's the only possible outcome.
Option.
That's the only option, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember when Drink.Well opened, I told David Allen specifically, I said, you know, if ever you come in here and it's not great, you have to tell me.
Sure.
Because so often places open and everyone's really excited about them, right? And we pour all of this love and all of this attention into them. And then 6 months later, you ask someone about it and they say, you know, I went and it wasn't that good.
Right. Tell somebody, man.
You know, tell somebody, especially if you're my friend.
Sure.
Tell me.
And I think we're so addicted and connected to niceties and social etiquette that we won't be critical. And the problem is with that is that being critical is a human right and a human skill that needs to happen. Like you have to say, this was okay, but you guys have done way better at what happened.
Right.
I mean, I don't know why we don't hold ourselves to higher standard. I mean, shit, if we talk about the spirits market, I am outspoken like nothing else, because you guys could have had better work than this. What were you doing? You know?
Right.
Because if everybody slacks off, then everything's slacked off. But if everybody's doing excellent, everything is excellent.
Oh yeah, a rising tide raises all ships.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think sometimes too we don't recognize that every place does have its own vibe, right?
Sure, for sure.
And you know, how is it that Drink.Well exists in a world where it's as good as Midnight Cowboy or Whistlers or Hot Stepper? Like, how do we all be the best that we can be
in your own ways
and still be excellent? All of us are excellent bars, but we're all so different, right? And so I think it's unfair to say that one bar is better than the other.
No, you can't.
I'll tell a story. My bookkeeper went to Gramercy Tavern in New York.
Where's that? Oh, okay.
In New York. It's a Danny Meyer restaurant, or it was, right? And you know, Danny Meyer, of course, is the blueprint, right? He's who we're all supposed to be looking towards for guidance.
Right.
And went into Gramercy Tavern, sat at the bar, and the bartender, his shirt was wrinkled, it was untucked, was kind of surly, the service was slow. And, you know, my bookkeeper friend was saying, this is supposed to be Mecca for the hospitality industry. I'm having a terrible experience.
Yeah.
And what that reinforced is that any bar or restaurant can be the best bar or the best restaurant on any given night of the week.
For a day.
Right?
You're right. Yeah.
If your entire staff is dialed in, if the place is like as clean as it can be, if the drinks are as consistent as they can be, the ice machine is on point, your juices are fresh, everything is clicked in.
Yeah.
You could be the best bar in the country that night. And it doesn't matter if you're Drink.Well or Trick Dog or Anvil or some, you know, whatever beer dive down the street.
Yeah.
And I've had those nights at Drink.Well where I look around and I realize every single thing is clicking here.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't happen all the time. Like, there's plenty of nights where there's something that's just not.
Well, and the customers have a lot to do with that too.
Of course.
But you do. I've been there those nights, and I think that's what you're talking about. That it's like, this is really flowing.
Yeah.
We're all connected here.
It's all working.
Yeah.
It's all working. Yeah. And then there are those nights when nothing's working.
Right.
Everything's breaking. The juice is like a day older than you want it to be. Mm-hmm. Someone came in, we call it skunking, where like someone comes in in a bad mood, and then everyone around them becomes in a bad mood.
Yeah, contagious.
And someone has skunked the building, and Mike and I aren't getting along that day, so our vibe is off, so we're projecting that onto the rest of the staff.
Right.
And everything's disorganized, and we're out of something, and those days happen with as much frequency sometimes as the really, really awesome days, right?
Yeah.
So, you just can't get lazy and settle into those bad days.
You're totally right. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. I had at a place I considered the Mecca here in town for a long time. I had a bad accident. I won't talk about who it was, but I had a bad experience. But you know what? I told the GM, I saw him that night. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is going on?
Sure.
You guys aren't going to sub a mezcal for me that I'm calling? Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Sure.
But I mean, and I still remember that. I'm not even hateful or resentful or anything, but that one thing. But that made it better. And I know that it got back to the staff. And I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass. I'm trying to help because it helps us all. If we're all great, then we're all great.
Right. Right. Well, and there are certain situations where I've certainly gone into places that I love and had a bad experience because my preferences that night shifted, right? Gotcha. And they couldn't live up to what my preference was, whether they knew it or not, or whether I knew it or not.
Yeah.
And I always think about that scene in the movie High Fidelity where Jack Black is saying, complaining about something. He's like, how can it be bullshit to state a preference, right? And sometimes people come in and they don't have a good time. I can just tell the guest is not loving what we're doing, but it's because what they were looking for that night is not what we do.
Right. And you can't do anything about that.
You can't do anything, but it's hard because you want to make every single person elated. Yeah. But sometimes you do have to settle back and say, you know what? There's nothing I can do to make this person have an awesome time.
That's
and I can sense those people. Like as soon as they sit down, I just know they're not going to love it. And I'm going to do my best. But they're not going to love it. Do. They're not going to love it. And at the very least, I usually tell people in that situation, have you been to fill in the blank? Because I'm willing to bet that they are going to have exactly what you want.
Yeah. Well, it's good of you, though, to know. Because it's about your customers, too.
Yeah.
And they'll come back. Even if they're having a bad experience, but you're helpful and it's not the right moment for them, they'll still come back. But here's something that I want to talk about. Because Drink.Well is doing really well. We'll talk about Backbeat in a second. But you personally have had a pretty good career as a mixologist, and please, that is not an invective or a derogatory term.
I don't care. That word doesn't bother me.
Okay, good. Coctologist is actually one of my favorite ones. But did you ever see you thriving in a lecture? Because now it's all starting to come together for me. You incredibly intelligent. You do well at school. You get your degree. Now it just seems like you're applying that knowledge and the attention to details to a different medium, and that medium is spirit. So how has that been for you, being the performer, being the competitor in this cocktail world? It's
weird and it's not weird. So it's not weird in the sense that I've always been very driven, and whatever career, whatever job I've had, I fully immerse myself in it.
Yeah.
Because I want to be great at it.
Sure.
I've never needed to be the best at something. That's not an aspiration that I've ever had. But I do want to feel like I'm great at it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's felt natural because this is something that requires you to immerse yourself in it fully in order to be good at it.
Right.
So what is strange for me is that it's a very public-facing role.
It's very rock star-ish.
And especially in the context of Michael and I's relationship, he's so much better at that piece of it, right?
Being the public-facing guy? Being the voice, maybe?
He's more jovial.
Yeah.
He is more, he's a cold caller. Like he can walk up to anybody and start up a conversation, and they can feel like they have a rapport with him instantly.
Right.
I don't have that skill. I am the closer, right?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of insecurity the first couple of years because anything that's related to this industry that's somewhat academic in nature, right? Knowing the cocktail recipes,
right.
Understanding
the production, man. That's another piece too.
Understanding production, the technical aspects of the job. That's really just about how much you're willing to study, right? But the intangible pieces of the business, your ability to talk to people, relate to them, build a rapport, earn their trust, be likable, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
That was the part that I thought, I'm a fucking fraud right now. Like, I'm a complete fraud because anyone can read a book and master a lot of recipes, but that doesn't make them a good bartender, right?
For sure. It's soft skills.
Total soft skills.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I thought, okay, well, and I think a lot of people get stuck in that mode where they need to be told they can make a good drink, right? And that's
how they feel their love.
That's what they care about. Do I make a good drink? And to be perfectly candid, for the first couple of years of doing this, that's where I was. Like, I wanted
needed to know.
I wanted someone to say, you can make a good drink.
Anybody, right? Or somebody in particular, or a certain type of person?
The guests, other people in the industry. The other thing is that because we started this so late, Michael a little bit less so, but I definitely have a high level of insecurity about the fact that we did start late.
Yeah.
And we have a very atypical situation. And I remember having a conversation with Justin Elliott one night, and, he told me, he's like, look, you're never going to have ground up credibility in this industry.
Ground up?
Like,
ground up.
Got
it.
Right. Where like you started as a bar back, and then you were a bartender, and then a bar manager, and then a GM, and then a bar, and then the bar owner is like the end of the story for a lot of people. Right. And he's like, you're never going to have that ground up credibility.
How do you feel about that?
It bothers me because this is an industry that's driven on like blood, sweat, and tears, right?
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I felt like, well, I haven't toiled in the same way that a lot of people toil.
Right.
The first bar that I worked behind was the one that I own.
Yeah.
It's a very different way to get there. So in a lot of senses, I feel like I'm trying to catch up to where everyone is.
Yeah.
And
it's an interesting thing. Do you feel like, even though I would think that you do deserve it, but do you feel like at times when you're competing and doing well and people are giving you're on the news, for example, do you think you deserve it?
I never feel like I deserve good things that happen to me. I never.
Are you
feel
Catholic?
No.
No.
No. I mean, I grew up in a house where I just wasn't praised verbally, right? And so I never was told like you're smart, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
So I'm always hungry for it, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I guess sometimes I don't feel like I deserve it, right?
Yeah.
But then on the same time, I do know that I work hard.
You work for it,
and I care.
Sure.
I really care. I really want to do a good job. I want to be good at this.
Because you wonder if someone is obsessed with details, which I think you are, and they're obsessed with it for 3 years. And they think they put 80 hours of mental time into studying something. Is that not better or the same as 10 years of putting 10 hours? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like it's all about a level of engagement, I think.
Of course.
And it's a matter of how you're going to devote your time to something. And just because you, by happenstance, bust tables because you don't know what you want to do for 5 years, right? I mean, that's a long time to bust tables. I don't know.
Right.
That's not maybe the right kind of dues. I mean, it's a very similar dynamic in the music industry too.
Yeah.
Where people come in. But you're obviously doing a good job with it, and you're being recognized for it, and you're the president of the USBG, right? And I suspect that you're leaving because of the time commitment.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think, you know what? Thinking through it, I think what makes me guilty about it is that there are so many people who are doing such great work, and not everyone gets equal credit. Right? Because this is also a very PR-driven industry.
It absolutely
right?
is. You got to either be a self-promoter or pay someone to promote you. Yeah.
And that's, I was going back to Jim Meehan. He was talking, that same talk, he was talking about, opening PDT and what the cocktail scene in New York was like at that time.
Yeah.
And he said, at that time, the other player in the game was Sasha Petrosky.
Sure.
And Sasha did not want to talk to the press He was not interested in promoting himself
Yeah.
or his bar. And he really...
he wanted to do what he wanted to do.
He wanted
right?
to do what he wanted to do. And Jim was like, well, look, these reporters, these photographers, these writers, they want to talk to somebody.
Sure.
And if we're going to get the craft to be respected, he's like, it might as well be me.
You're
right?
absolutely right. Yeah.
And he got, he said, I remember feeling very insecure about that because I thought, well, am I selling out? Am I like being braggadocious or,
yeah.
by putting myself out there?
But someone has
saying,
to be the icon.
But someone has to be that person,
Yeah,
right? And
for
someone
sure.
has to, and you can't, as long as you are not screwing someone over,
right,
being dishonest, or lying, or
cheating your way to the top,
or demeaning someone else in the process.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with saying, yes, I do good work and I care, and I'm proud of the work I do.
There's
I'm proud of the work that
nothing
my
wrong with
team
that.
does. But I think the key is you have to recognize it's not just about you, right? Drink.Well is not great because I do a good job or because Michael does a good job.
It's a team.
It's good. It's because everyone does a good job and we expect that of them.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Anything good that happens in that space is ultimately driven by, do people come in and have a good time?
That's all that
right?
matters.
Are people made happy by what we do?
Your bar is not defined by how many times you're on Eater.
Of course.
Like you personally, or how many times you're on the news.
Of course.
Because one, people have really short attention spans. And two, it's not about you. People don't say, oh, well, just because the single point of failure for Drink.Well.
Right.
Like, no, that doesn't happen. And so I like it because that's how, again, and I always use music as a metaphor, but that's how music is too. There's the guy that says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And it's okay if I talk about it and the press about it. And then you got Kurt Cobain that they succumb and are crushed by the fame because they want to have nothing to do with it.
Right.
So, I mean, that happens. So it seems like you're doing a good job with it and you're keeping it honest and you're promoting good things. And how has the USBG experience been for you as president?
Well, USBG has been great because in the sense that I learned a lot about this industry in general,
right?
Especially early in it, 4 or 5 years ago when we first moved to Austin, probably one of the first people that we met was David Allen. Yeah. And he really encouraged us to join, and I'm glad that I did because it was exciting to be a part of the USBG at that time when it was a smaller chapter and everyone was learning together, right? Yeah. Now the chapter is much larger. We've grown a lot, and so you have people at all varying levels in their career, which is really important because it broadened. For a while, it was like the 10 or 20 like super nerdy cocktail geeks, and that was the sole thing that it did was, all right, here's the 20 cocktail geeks that are going to get together
like a chess club.
Geek out on cocktails, and that was all we talked about. Now we talk about cocktails, we talk about spirits, we talk about distilling, we talk about speed, efficiency, service, hospitality, food, beer, wine. It's so much more than that, right? The USBG is not an organization without its flaws, right? I think it has a lot of work to do.
Are the flaws what drove you away, or was it purely just
it was purely the time commitment, right? I mean, it requires, from time to time, it takes up all of your time. Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm at a place in, my career and in the space that the bars are going to be in that I can't give it the level of attention that it deserves. Right. So and also I think it's time to hand it off to a new...
Because it's been a couple years for you, right?
I've been the president for 2 years. I was the secretary for 2 years before that. So I've been involved on a local level at a high level for the last 4 years. Right. And I'm really grateful to everything I've been able to learn and the relationships that I've built within the USBG. But I also think that the city is in a different place than it was.
Oh, yeah, it's
then,
totally different.
And it needs a new crop of leaders that are more immersed in that thing, And I intend to still stay involved, and I intend to still stay vocal about the ways in which I think it needs to be better serving its members.
I don't suspect you'll go quietly into the night. I'm sure you'll be outspoken voice, you and Michael both. Let's take a moment to talk about the bottle that we've selected for this conversation.
Oh, yes, indeed.
It's funny, everybody's like, oh, the old charter. I'm like, well, yes, but my old charter will go away very fast because everybody keeps flocking towards it. But you picked the Booker's 25th anniversary. This is a 10-year bourbon, cask strength, although it looks like it might be filtered. I don't want to get too nerdy about that, but it's about 65%. What do you think of this Beam goodness?
So I had the pleasure of sharing a nip of this with Adam Harris not too long ago.
Mr. Beam himself.
Yeah, National American Whiskey Ambassador for Beam.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that he described this bourbon is perfect to me in that, when you first wake up in the morning and you get that first hot cup of coffee and you drink it and you're like, oh, coffee, right?
Yeah, it's a sensory overload.
You just feel so comforted by it and welcomed into the day.
For sure.
And this bourbon is very much that thing.
Yeah.
It's like you sip it and there's just, you want to hold it, cup it in your hands and just say, oh, whiskey, And the thing that I really love about Booker's in general, but especially this expression of it, is that there's a viscosity to it, kind of an oiliness.
Right.
That is just so pleasing to me.
Well, it cuts a lot of the burnout.
It just feels so luxurious.
Yeah.
I guess. It's really silky.
It does. It's thick. Mm-hmm. It's not just, there's not as much water in it. So you're talking about lots of distillate, a lot of distillate. It's really beautiful. And the bottle is really beautiful. And I think this was, it was pretty limited. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad we get to share this one.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure what I'm waiting to ping you with questions about, and what hopefully people are really looking forward to hearing about, is the new spot. It's now the Backbeat or Backbeat?
Just Backbeat.
Backbeat, that is right next to Ramen Tatsuya on South Lamar, right?
Correct.
And I saw some pictures you guys are in the process of building. I won't get into timelines and shit because I know that stuff it moves around so much.
Yeah, thank you.
But you wrote a great record with Drink.Well. It resonated. It's platinum. People like to listen to it still. Is this trying to be something completely unique, or is it a riff on the general values you guys have in Drink.Well, that it's comfortable, but yet the cocktails are incredibly detailed and well executed?
I think the challenge is how do you translate all the values that are really important to you?
Yeah.
And that are important to the integrity of your space. Mm-hmm. How do you translate that in a slightly larger space with more moving parts?
So you got more square footage this time.
More square footage. Yeah, it's almost double the square footage.
Oh, wow.
Not quite double, but almost.
Yeah.
And there are certain values that we have as a staff and as a service model that, it's like, all right, how do we do everything that we're great at doing at Drink.Well in a bigger space that's going to move faster?
Right.
And what sacrifices do you make in that process? And also, I think you need to give Backbeat a chance to build up its own set of values that are going to be important.
Organically just kind of rise
for that
up,
space, right?
Yeah.
But there are certain things that, like I never see Michael or I ever opening like a true downtown spot or a nightclub we still want it to have kind of the character of a neighborhood spot, regardless.
And it's gonna have food as well.
It'll have some light food, bar snack. Definitely not as kitchen driven as Drink.Well is.
Gotcha.
We really want to focus on the drinks, because the thing is that we didn't want to venture into doing a second project until we found, are you solving a problem or are you creating a solution?
Yeah,
right? That's the question that people ask.
Right.
And we didn't want to just create a solution where there wasn't a problem, right?
Gotcha.
And not to say
market
that it's
opportunity, right?
Yeah. Not to say that there's a problem, but there's just there's very few non-restaurant great cocktail bars south of the river.
I completely agree.
And there are some amazing bar programs on that side of the river.
Sure.
Box Table is fantastic.
Oh, it's great,
I think they've really set a new standard for
that area,
and for what just cocktails in general in the city are about. Mm-hmm. Odd Duck has great drinks.
Yeah.
But there's no standalone true cocktail bar in that part of town.
Right. It's all restaurant programs.
Restaurant programs. And I think that the opportunity to do a space that people can enjoy late night, that
is it going to be different? Is it going to be the full hours this time?
2 a.m.
Oh, that's great.
2 a.m. Yeah.
You know how many people want to keep partying at Drink.Well?
I know. Every time I have to tell people to leave at 12:30, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So late hours, and I really feel like we're offering something that I mean, people want it because it's an extension of Drink.Well, sure. But I also feel like
it'll exist on its own right too, though.
That we're doing something special down there, right? That doesn't exist already. And we have the opportunity to, the same way that I think Drink.Well, I hope, elevated what was going on all the great things that were already happening on North Loop. You know, the Tigers was already killing it. Foreign and Domestic was killing it.
Right.
And we came in and we're like, all right, how do we round this out, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we have the opportunity to do the same thing on South Lamar with Backbeat.
You guys going to focus on any particular, anything that you want to particularly have a nice collection of? Some people have that preference, you know?
Well, Drink.Well is very clearly American whiskey focused.
Yeah.
I think Backbeat, I'm really aiming to have, at least in terms of neat spirits, a little bit more of a world whiskey focus.
Oh, okay.
I think that people are hungry for that. I'm really excited to expand the wine offerings at Backbeat.
Yeah,
we get so immersed in talking about cocktails, but I am really excited to have a larger wine selection. And if you look at what other bars around the country are doing, you know, where do you go in Austin that has like a great champagne program that's a cocktail bar? Right?
I don't know.
or a great sherry program or a vermouth program, right?
Yeah.
Like those are things that I think are starting to trickle into Austin.
Yeah.
But we have to be consistent about pushing it, right?
Yep, for sure.
And like I know Small Victories, Josh Loving's place is going to open, and I know that that's a big part of his program, and that's
which
awesome.
part? The sherry or the
sherry, or at least like sherry and vermouth and things like that. And I think that's really exciting because what happens is that I've seen it where people get really wrapped up in a particular spirit for 6 months
and then they
abandon it. Right? And in order for your guests to really get excited about it, it has to be unrelenting.
For sure.
You know?
You got to be in through the head.
You've got to be an advocate for it.
Yeah.
And get people excited about it.
There's going to be a Peace Corps program too in a place that's coming out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the interviews. I'll love to share the details about that, but that's a great. So you've got sherry, you obviously bourbon, always. You've got mezcal. There's that other Vox Table place opening up as well that will specialize in agave spirits. Yeah.
Yep.
And you guys wanting to focus on. I mean, you think it's going to be champagne?
Well, I mean, that's
more wine.
That's one of the parts of the program that I wanted.
That's a kill. That'd be incredible.
You know, I drink champagne when I'm happy. I drink it when I'm sad.
Yeah.
You know, right? So. I think that that's exciting that you can have a cocktail bar that has an equally strong wine program, and a great beer program too. But you know, I think from a cocktail perspective, like the hard part is not screwing with it too much. Sure, right?
Don't
the temptation to overthink it is really high.
Right.
And especially when it's your second place and
sophomore jinx, as they say.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge fear because people, you know, they want to see like, what are they going to do next? And, you know, there's that temptation to get like really culinary about it.
Right.
And super fancy. Yeah. But at the same time, it's
gastronomy.
Like, you know, just don't mess with it too much.
Yeah.
Like,
just let it be who you are.
You know? Exactly. And it can still be excellent. And that's the hard part. And that's where you go back to a conversation of pushing classic cocktails or creating originals, right? And creating original cocktails is a real tricky road to walk because, first of all, everything's been done.
Yes.
Everything's been done.
Beatles did it.
Everything's been done.
For sure.
So to have an original cocktail is kind of a non-existent
needle
idea,
in a haystack
right?
kind of thing.
Yeah. And the harder you try to do it, the greater the likelihood is that you'll fail.
Sure.
Right?
You're totally right. Yeah. It'll be contrived.
But at the same time, I feel like you can get an old fashioned anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? So I do think that there is a portion of like those signature recipes that give a bar its identity and its character. Because otherwise, if you're just going to drink old fashions, like there's 12 great bars to get old fashions at, right?
Yeah, right.
If you're talking about the product alone, what are you going to do to make your product unique and stand out? The key is like, how do you not get too fussy about it?
Right.
Not get too precious about it. Get fussy enough.
Yeah, it's hard.
But just not too precious. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'm like in the process.
Are you guys done with the menu conceptually?
No.
No?
No.
You got plenty of time, right?
I'm in the middle of that right now.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, trying to get my head around like what makes sense for that space. Because there also is a functionality question that needs to be addressed. And I think a lot of bars overlook that. Backbeat's going to be a bigger space, higher volume. It's going to have an upstairs rooftop patio, which is really beautiful, but there's no bar up there, right?
Yeah.
So how do you get drinks in people's hands quickly and that are consistent in quality? So, there's a functionality piece that needs to be addressed, and that prevents you from getting too fussy. When you're trying to serve, 200 or 300 covers a night, and you're also trying to have 6 pickup cocktails, those two things don't exist in the same world, right? So,
so why are you guys doing it, really? Like, for you, why would you do it?
Because I feel like we have the opportunity to offer something in a part of town that
is not served already.
Is underserved right now. And I like the idea that we're helping to, add a unique voice to that street. I mean,
you're
Austin's
in great company
a lot
down there.
Austin, oh yeah, well that's the other. I always joke this is like all part of my elaborate plan to be closer to Lenoir and Odd Duck and Ramen and Tatsuya and all my favorite restaurants. This is really just about me getting closer to those places. No, I really think that we have the opportunity to do something special. I hope people like it. Of course, we're terrified that people aren't going to like it. It's going to be like the sophomore album that completely flops. But you can't think about that.
No,
right?
You can't. You can't be afraid to try to do great things.
Right. Like I said before, if you're not demeaning someone else, ripping someone off, you're doing the work, you're putting out a good product, people will find you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Drink.Well.
It grew, and it grew on its own legs.
There is no reason on paper why Drink.Well should be a success, right?
No.
You have 2 operators who have never worked in a bar before. Right?
Yeah.
That built it from scratch. And if you go by that logic,
everybody fails.
Everyone fails, right? Like, we're 2 people from New York, like double whammy, right? Oh, you're gonna move to Austin. You're gonna open a cocktail bar,
you pompous sons of bitches. You think you're just gonna come and walk in here, right?
Exactly. Like, there's no reason on paper why Drink.Well should have been a success.
Yeah. But there's the energy that you can't explain it.
And just you have to put in the hours.
Yeah.
Like, you got to put in the hours.
I know you guys are doing a great job with it. I'm going to ask you anyway, but is there even a loose date as to when you guys are trying to get it out? South by, is that right?
Before that, God, hopefully before South by. We're really aiming to have it soft open just after the new year.
Gotcha.
Because here's the deal. On paper, the building will be done before the end of the year.
Sure, but it's all the fucking
But the hard part is
stuff.
It's difficult to staff a bar in December.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Right? So that's our trick. It's like, it's not so much about the building piece of it. It's about getting the right team in place, because that is crucial.
Are you going to share staff at all between the two
Yeah,
locations?
I'd like to cross-train.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also tricky because, Drink.Well, we've been very fortunate to have very little turnover at Drink.Well.
Yeah.
And we've had a consistent staff, and that consistent staff has really helped to underscore that neighborhood, reliable, consistent thing, right?
Yeah.
People can expect a familiar face when they walk into Drink.Well. And if you start to take that away and start,
what does that do?
What does that do to the vibe of the space? And we have probably the best team that I think we've ever had at Drink.Well right now.
Yeah.
And of course I say that with every team.
Well, it's good though. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and I always tell, something that was taught to me that I think is important to pass on is every bar team, you're part of a legacy, right? Yeah. There was a staff before you. There will be a staff after you at some point.
No matter what. Yeah.
And in what condition are you going to leave that bar program when you move on to do whatever the next thing you're going to do is, right?
It follows you.
And so I am hoping that the spaces can share staff at some point, but I also recognize that Drink.Well has something special going on right now, and I don't want to mess with that too much.
Makes perfect sense. Well, it's been a great chatting with you, and I love hearing about the intricacies of what is a very interesting relationship between you and Michael.
To say the least.
To say the least. I can't wait to man. I've looked forward to your anniversary party at Drink.Well every year. I love it going.
It's crazy that it's going to be 4 years.
I know, and it has been Drink.Well for me has been one of the most influential spots. I don't know that we would have been able to feel the way about the industry and as warm about it and like as positive about releasing whatever we release if it hadn't been for you guys and your staffs. And we've forged some wonderful relationships with you guys and friendships, hopefully, that last us a long time. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's the highest of compliments.
Well, I mean it, man. It's a wonderful spot, and it is the place that anytime someone's in town, like, you have to go. There's no alternative. So thank you so much, Jessica.
Well, thank you very much.
So did you guys learn a bit about Jessica? I think it was a great story. Lots of good tidbits. The sordid love affair between her and Michael. It's a great chunk of this story. I think it's very telling about who they both are. I think I learned a little bit about myself and how to communicate better. No, this is not a therapy session, but you know what? Why not? Why not? Why not let it be whatever it needs to be? So thanks again for tuning in to Show to V. Let's all, in early 2016, meet at Backbeat, because I cannot wait to see what they're serving and slinging. Thanks again, but whatever we do, no matter what it is that we do, keep dancing.